Disney's first new American attraction since the shutdown of its theme parks came in the form of Webslingers, a Spider-Man adventure in early June 2021. The ride opened in Avengers Campus to high crowds and low enthusiasm. But does the attraction live up to the Spider-Man name? Is it worthy of the criticism? For those concerned, I will be discussing spoilers in this video. I was fortunate enough to secure one ride on Webslingers, something I should note. First off, my party did experience a breakdown on this attraction. We played the first screen, and we were cycled through the rest of the ride with no effects or games in operation. It was certainly an odd experience. Regardless, we were lapped, and we got the full experience on our second go around. And secondly, I've limited footage of this attraction because it is a 3D shooting dark ride and of course very new and very popular. I'll be using Avengers Campus footage for a majority of this review. Now, this attraction has been compared to Toy Story Midway Mania by everyone I've talked to, which is understandable, but I'll do my best to examine this attraction on its own and limit the comparisons as best as possible. But one thing Spider-Man has over Midway Mania is a pre-show. I was under the impression the pre-show would have a Spider-Man animatronic, so I was pretty disappointed to see just another screen. Despite that, the pre-show did a nice job of setting up the premise for the ride, and Peter Parker / Spider-Man was on point. I loved how the Spider-Bots used the vents to escape. I'm really happy they had additional screens within the vents to actually show their escape. It seriously elevated this pre-show to a whole other level. Unfortunately, the pre-show did introduce one of my main criticisms of the ride. I found the Sharon AI to be kind of annoying and unnecessary. Sharon's high-pitched voice gets really old really quickly, and she lacks the personality of a Jarvis or even a Friday to an extent. Frankly, I wish they reused one of the AIs from the movies. Once you reach the boarding area, you get a great view of the massive ride vehicles. I was honestly shocked to see how huge they are. They look way larger in person than they do over photo or video. I wouldn't be surprised if the Webslinger vehicles are double the size of the Midway Mania vehicles. The size of the vehicles is very important for a number of reasons which I will address later. As you approach the SUV-sized vehicles, you are handed 3D glasses. Obviously, with the times we are in, the glasses do fog, which hindered my experience to an extent. I was hoping this ride wouldn't use glasses, which obviously disappointed me. Glasses are fine, I just prefer not to have them. And putting on glasses kinda takes away from the magic of a Disney shooting dark ride. Having something rest on your face is just kind of a reminder that this whole experience is manufactured, and you're not actually slinging webs with Spidey. As you enter the vehicle, you can confirm they are in fact massive, as you have plenty of space between you and each member of your party. This attraction uses a lap bar similar to Midway Mania, but it is a single bar for all 4 riders. The bulky restraint seemed a little unnecessary for the ride, but it did not bother me during the actual ride experience. Additionally, once the door closes to your vehicle, you realize your view is extremely restricted. At points it kind of felt like you were looking out of a window, which breaks the immersion and expands upon that manufactured feeling I just mentioned. Once dispatched, you turn left and head down a straightaway with busted pipes and vents from the rogue Spider-Bots, which looked really nice and actually reminded me of the damage seen near the end of Rise of the Resistance before the Kylo Ren animatronic. As you go down the straightaway, Peter and Sharon discuss the stakes and the plan to defeat the bots. This discussion continues throughout the ride, and Sharon's annoying voice unfortunately stays for the duration of the attraction. However, Peter's lines feel very natural and true to the character, which fans of the films will definitely appreciate. The vehicle turns left to reach the first screen. This first game is set in the warehouse. Take note of that. During my first cycle, I noticed how well the web slingers worked, which was a concern I had going in. It actually looks and feels like you are shooting the webs. Now, I say that with an asterisk. It does feel like you are shooting the webs, but the colors of each individual web slinger did throw me off at first. It's important to note you aren't slinging Spider-Man's webs, you are slinging your own. which will either be red, purple, orange, or blue. The bright colors really contrast with Spider-Man's white webs, which did take me out of the experience for the first game. But once I got a handle of the mechanics, I quickly forgot about the difference and engaged with the attraction. There isn't really a solution to this problem, as guests need to differentiate between their own webs. It's just something that I should have expected but did not. But that calls back to the huge ride vehicles. I think seating 2 guests next to each other is better than seating 4 guests in a row for a shooting dark ride. With 2 guests per car, it's much easier to decipher which ammo belongs to who. If you've ridden Berry Tales at Knott's and Midway Mania in this very park, I'm sure you can note the difference in intimacy. Moving on, your vehicle takes a right turn into the second screen, which is themed to Pym Test Kitchen. Now here's where my biggest problem with this attraction comes into play. The attraction takes you all around Avengers Campus, but you never actually leave the warehouse you started in. The turns in between screens aren't enough to immerse me into a new location. It really did feel like I was turning a corner in that same warehouse, which really took me out of this screen and the 2 that follow. You know you aren't in Pym Test Kitchen, but the screen in front of you says otherwise. This is where it feels the most manufactured for me. It felt fake and unengaging. But if you are able to look past that, the actual gameplay and visuals of the screen are just as great as the first. Leaving Pym Foods, you turn left into the Tavon Collection, better known as Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. I had the same issue of continuity with this screen, as it was hard to be immersed in that collection when I knew I was in that same warehouse. But besides that, I thought the visuals looked the best with this screen over the other 2, and the story of saving Peter from freezing is far better than that of other screens. And for the final screen, you turn right into the Avengers compound, which is the icon of Avengers Campus. With this turnaround, Disney put the most effort into theming the walls to look like you are actually at their headquarters. It still wasn't enough for me, but I did appreciate the effort. Although an improvement over the previous 2 screens, I have an additional criticism of this screen in particular. For the first 3 screens, the electronic doors open either upward or to the side, which feels natural. But for the Avengers screen, the animation shows you being pushed up to meet the action on an upper level. And once the screen ends, it shows you being lowered back down. This once again broke the immersion for me, as obviously you don't feel anything, while the screen shows some what would have been exciting forces. But as for the gameplay, this is where the story wraps up, as you defeat a massive spider bot to silence the remaining smaller ones. As always, the gameplay is really fun. The ride vehicle makes another left turn and down another straightaway with no screen. However, there are some nice practical webs with practical spider bots, some of which even move, which is an excellent touch. The narration of Peter and Sharon wraps up as the vehicle turns left and back into the same station in which you boarded. Once you exit, you go up a ramp, which leads to a very long hallway, where you can view high scores and see one last Spider-Bot waving goodbye from a vent, which was a very cute final touch. That wraps up the ride experience. Let's dig into some overall thoughts. First, the major positives. I walked away very impressed with the mechanics of web shooting. It works incredibly well. That's something you can't experience from the POVs of this attraction. Additionally, I love the visuals in this ride. Specifically in the mission breakout scene, the visuals look very sharp. Now, the negatives. I've already discussed my dislike of the glasses and Sharon, and I voiced my distaste for the lack of immersion at length. But what are the other issues? Well, the duration. This ride is very, very short. There are only 4 screens total. For reference, Midway Mania has 7 total, and Berry Tales has 10 total. Here's where the massive ride vehicles come back into play. If this attraction had smaller vehicles, I believe it would be much longer. Webslingers sits on a pretty small plot of land, and its vehicles, and therefore ride track, take up a ton of space. Had the vehicles been smaller, the ride could have been much longer. However, I think the size of the vehicles is justified. The inside perimeter of the window the vehicle makes is covered with sensors, which I'm sure are necessary for web slinging. If the ride vehicles were smaller, you'd probably get much more ride time, but I'm sure the web slinging would be much more inaccurate. It's the old debate of quantity versus quality. Now, some may point to the two straightaways I mentioned, which don't have screens, but I think those straightaways are necessary for story reasons and for capacity reasons. The first straightaway drops some exposition, and the final straightaway wraps up the story nicely, even with Sharon. Additionally, those two straightaways offer practical sets and practical props, which are very limited on this ride. Taking those away would be a mistake in my opinion. So really, with all those factors in mind, it isn't very surprising to see how short the ride is. Now here's the $1,000,000 question. Does it suck? My answer is no. It's a very fun ride, and I'm sure the attraction will be at its best once the lines die down and you can hop on with 3 of your friends and have a real fun time. The best elements of this attraction can only be experienced in person, so if you haven't, I strongly urge you to go out and ride it before you form your own opinion. But I'd like to reframe how we think about this ride. Does it play a headlining role at California Adventure? I'd argue no. The attraction plays a supporting role in Avengers Campus to Mission Breakout, and once the Avengers E-ticket opens, it'll be reduced to a tertiary role in the land. And as for the park as a whole, it serves as a very strong supporting attraction, joining the ranks of Grizzly River Run and, of course, Toy Story Midway Mania. Now, does it work as a replacement for It's Tough to Be a Bug? That's a big yes from me. We need to remember, this attraction was not meant to challenge for title of best ride in the park. Once Disney finishes Avengers Campus, this will be the only ride in the land everyone in the family will be able to ride. I'm sure little ones will be afraid of Mission Breakout and most likely the Avengers E-ticket. This mindset is even supported by Disney's ad campaign for Avengers Campus. They were really pushing the spectacle of seeing Spider-Man swing over the attraction rather than the actual ride itself. It's important to keep that in mind. Yes, this ride is flawed, but is it worthy of the criticism? I'd argue yes, but to an extent. Some seem to be holding this attraction to the standard of Flight of Passage and Rise of the Resistance. That's just incredibly unfair. But if you accept the fact this is a supporting attraction, comparisons to Midway Mania and other supporting attractions are completely fair. So, was this attraction a good fit for California Adventure? Well, no. It seems unnecessary to have another shooting dark ride in this park when California Adventure could really use a traditional modern dark ride or another roller coaster. This park has 2 coasters, and one of them is a cookie-cutter Wild Mouse. It's kind of sad how DCA now has the same number of shooting dark rides as it does roller coasters. Now, to be fair to Webslingers, there's no way a quality Disney dark ride or a coaster worth building at a Disney park would fit on that plot of land. But if you look at the ride lineup as a whole, this attraction does seem kind of unnecessary. But it'll be interesting to see how this ride ages. With California Adventure's bright future, I'm sure this attraction will be accepted by guests. This won't be the first Disney attraction to survive a rough opening reaction, and it probably won't be the last. Just give it a few years, and I'm sure fans will come around to appreciate the ride as is, just as they did with Smuggler's Run and Mission Breakout. That about wraps up my thoughts on the new Spider-Man attraction at Disney's California Adventure. Now you know the drill. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and let me know down below if you'd like to see where this ride ranks in the California Adventure ride lineup in my opinion, or if you'd like to see a comparison video between this attraction and Midway Mania. Alright, cut.